Hello, everyone. My guest today is Omar Tawakol. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Voicea. Prior to the company, he was the founder and CEO of BlueKai, which was the world's largest consumer data marketplace in DMP. Oracle acquired the company in 2014, and he served as the SVP and GM of the Oracle Data Cloud. Omar earned an MS and CS from Stanford, where he researched and published work on AI agents. All right, Omar, you ready to take us to the top?
Yes.
Why didn't you stay at Oracle? You didn't like the Data Cloud?
No, I had a good time there. I stayed there for 2.5 years, and sometimes you just get the entrepreneurial itch, and here we are.
2.5 years in Mountain View is like eternity, right? That's how it works. You're supposed to stay for 13 months past the cliff, then move on, and then get your equity in a new startup, right?
It was a fun ride there because I was reporting to Thomas Kurian, who was just a great guy to work for.
Yeah.
Well, I was reporting to Steve Miranda also, who was amazing.
All right, let's talk about Voicea. So what's the company doing? What's your revenue model? Is it pure play SaaS?
Yes, it is. Basically, it's a pure play SaaS. We emulate things like Dropbox, Zoom, where I call it consumerized B2B. Anybody can use us. There's a free model. You can upgrade to paid. And then when we see multiple people in an organization using us, then the team tries to engage and sell enterprise solutions.
Okay, great. So bottoms up. And then, give me a sample of a customer and how they're using you.
Yeah, so we have some financial institutions where whenever they speak to customers, they'll have Eva there on the call capturing items, updating Salesforce, updating Trello after the call so they know what the follow-ups were. Okay,
interesting. And is that your main target, financial institutions?
It's a bit broader than that. Anybody who uses WebEx or Zoom or Google Meet is a target for us. Essentially, those systems are the plumbing. They get you into the call. They make the call smooth. Our job is to be the intelligence so that you can just focus on the conversation. We capture everything. We transcribe it. We help you identify moments that look like actions, and then we can help you automatically update workflow. So instead of going back to your desk after 5 hours of meetings, trying to remember 5 hours of actions, we try to nudge you along and do some of that for you.
And give me a general sense here of what your sweet spot is. So on average, what's a company going to pay you per year to use your technology?
Yeah, it ranges from $9 a month to $30 a month per individual user. And we have seen a lot of viral growth. So we'll get in with one or two people, and then it grows to 5, 25, 100, 500. And we've only been charging for about 12 months.
Oh, great. And just to avoid going down, I'm sure you have like hundreds of different customer profiles based off team sizes. But if you take your total kind of, paid companies using you today divided by how many kind of seats across all of them, what would you say the average team size is using you? Are we talking like 10 or like 1,000?
I'd say average would be 10. We do have some people who are like, between 500 and 1,000.
Yeah.
But right now at 10, let me give you a sense why. We only introduced the enterprise option really in January. So that's where we've seen the growth. If you look a year ago, it was dominated by individuals. And now we're dominated by groups and teams in terms of the number of licenses. So it's changing quickly.
Yep. No, that makes fair sense. Basically, that's code for that average is going up. 5 months ago, it was maybe 5 per account. Now it's 10. And maybe by the end of the year, it's 50 or 60.
Yep, that's the goal for sure.
But at $10 on average, 10 seats on average per account with $9 a seat minimum, you're talking kind of price points somewhere around $100 a month in terms of your historical base and what they pay you, and that's obviously increasing with new customers today.
Yeah, I'd have to check the exact number, but you're in the right ballpark.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I want to get this kind of on a timeline. When did you launch the company?
2017 January is when we started full time. We went into alpha in the summer, beta by the end of the year, and we started charging in the summer of 2018.
Okay, and I always like to ask, especially like a guy like you who's been through the wheel before, what'd you spend on the MVP before your first dollar of revenue?
How much did I spend to get to the first dollar of revenue?
Yeah, some people will pre-sell an idea before they spend $1. Some will spend $5 million before they go out and make $1 of sale. I'm just curious where you fall on the spectrum. What did you guys put into the tool before you sold your first dollar?
Yeah, good question. So really the most thing I was focused on before even charging $1 was really usability and usage and growth. So I'd say we worked for about 5 months. Actually, our CTO came in February and we launched at the June. So, it was like, I'd say about 5 months, and we were ramping up people. So it was a fairly small spend initially.
Yep.
And then we said alpha and beta, we started hiring a bunch of people. So we started ramping up spend, and we stayed in that mode for a year. So, you could argue somewhere under, somewhere between 4 and 5 million before we started charging. But we started seeing signal in usage way before we started charging. So for example, in 2018, all our usage parameters went up about 100x.
What are they? What are your key usage parameters?
So in the beginning, before we started charging, we started really looking at how many people come in the door and start inviting Eva to 4 meetings in the first month. And that was really a signal that they trusted Eva enough to have it in their meetings participating. And that was our bread and butter. Like how much could we do that? And that one grew, like I said, about 100x in that year.
Well, what percent was that, right? So if you had 100 people come in today, how many of them invited 4 people in the first month?
Yeah, so we've moved on to a different metric, and we're no longer tracking that. Now that we have conversion to pay, that's where we start looking at different metrics. So if you look at conversion to pay, I think we're somewhere between 3 and 5% of the people who will come in will use it and will convert to pay. But the problem with that number is it also includes we acquire users in 2 basic ways. The first one is through advertising. The other one is through virality. Our virality coefficient now is at about 0.8.
You're so get it above 1 and you're showing on a rocket ship, man.
That's exactly what we're trying to do. We were at 0.2 when we started, so we're just getting better and better and better.
That's pretty good.
So that's one way that we acquire users, and the other way is, of course, just through advertising. And the problem with the advertising is it brings in some consumers and some business people, and we're getting better and better, really just focusing on business people.
Yep.
Because it's just cheaper to advertise in mechanisms that get you both. But as we get better at the way we construct the ads and the landing pages, we've seen the percentage of people come in with the work emails and work calendar much, much, much higher, and they convert better.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back to the viral coefficient, but I want to compare the two real quick. So on the paid side, what's fully weighted CAC?
I'm not sure I would disclose that.
Or maybe what I'm actually asking is how aggressive are you being in terms of payback period? Are you comfortable with 6 months, or you go for 12 months or more?
Good question. I don't remember the answer to that. I
Okay.
do have a SaaS dashboard, and I don't remember the payback period, but I think I'll give you a sense of it this way. So we acquire a user, they convert to paid, and they generally are just, if you look at their lifetime value in terms of how long they stay with us, we make money, but not a ton.
Yeah.
Why do we do it? Because many of those people convert to teams, and then we make a lot of money. Because what happens is you paid several $100s for a user, and if you're coming in, and more than half our users are in our higher tier of offerings.
You're talking about like the $30 or $90 a month.
Exactly. And half of all people do a yearly commit. So when you look at it that way, when we pay to acquire someone, we basically just get our money back, but then a percentage of those people convert to teams, and those teams are getting bigger and bigger. And so that's how we're making our money back.
Yeah. Let me try and say that in real numbers, and you correct me if I'm wrong. When you pay on ads to get a $30 a month user, and they pay $360 or $300 up front if you give a discount, and you paid $300 to get them on a gap and cash basis, you basically get it back instantly. And you're willing to do that because you're confident that user, one, they might extend it a year or two, but more importantly, they're going to invite their team with your viral coefficient, and that's going to grow to a bigger account.
You've got it. You've nailed it.
Okay.
Exactly right.
So now let me dive into the other channel, which is the viral coefficient. How did you move it from, that's a big move from 0.2 to 0.8. One's a sweet spot, but how'd you move it that far?
Yeah, essentially by fine tuning the product experience. And honestly, we're nowhere near done. So for instance, we've had this back and forth where we try to do all this training upfront in the onboard process, but what we saw is our conversion numbers go down. And so you try to skinny it down so people can get in, and you try to nurture them into learning, but a lot of people don't kind of go through the full nurture, and your conversion numbers at the top of the funnel may be okay, but then you haven't trained them the rest of the way. So there's this constant back and forth about how we get people to really understand how to work with us. And then what we try to do along the way is make sure that it's easy for them to share notes with other participants, because that's the way that other participants are going to see the notes and say, yeah, I like it. And then the third area that we've found, really impacts virality is the quality of what goes into the notes. So if the notes look good, someone's going to look at it and say, I want this. And in that world, there's actually this really interesting back and forth that we have to, and we're still in it right now, where you can put a lot of interesting content in the email notes that comes after the meeting, not the full meeting transcript, but some sort of extract from it. And if you do that, there's more for someone to read, but it could be noisy. And if you put very little, there's not much from the read and get excited about. So you're constantly
but it's more actionable potentially.
Correct. And you're experimenting with that. And even like as of 2 days ago, we rolled out another feature to kind of test out that operating point that gets people happy and drives virality.
So Omar, when you look at both these channels since 2017, I guess you really started charging 12 months ago or so, but how many customers have you scaled to now today?
Well, we just, I typically don't say these numbers, but you're such a good interviewer.
I appreciate that.
So we just hit a million in kind of equivalent. It's kind of net. We call it ARR, and it mixes, what comes in at a monthly and a yearly basis. So we just hit the $1 million point over a 12-month period. That's a pretty aggressive growth.
Omar, just to be clear, that is essentially saying, today or last month you did north of $83,000 a month, and
exactly.
Your run rate's more than $1 million.
Month.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So again, if earlier you said team sizes on average were 10 folks, right, at the $9 minimum, $90 a month, that would mean you probably have somewhere between 800 and 1,000 customers or logos on the platform.
In terms of, do you mean licenses or customers?
I mean actual brands and logos, which then make up all the seats underneath.
Yeah. I think that might be right. I know we have over 10,000 domains, but a lot of them are free.
Yeah.
And I know we have several thousand paid licenses, some of them individuals. So I'd say it's in that range, sub 1,000 paying domains.
Yep, that's great. And then take me back. So if you're doing kind of that run rate today, where were you a year ago?
I think we actually officially started about 13 months ago. So in the 13th month, we hit $1 million.
Okay. But so I guess what I'm asking is go back 12 months. So a month in, were you doing like $1,000 a month in revenue, or how low were you?
7,000, maybe less.
Yeah. See, that's nice. You can say 10,000% year-over-year growth. Come invest in my $1 billion valuation. All right. Speaking of valuations, did you decide to bootstrap or raise?
Oh, definitely raised. I had to, if you look at the engineers we hired, our CTO ran applied AI at Facebook. He was pulled in by Jan LeCun, so he's really good. And he pulled engineers from Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, LinkedIn. That's really hard for a company our size. I figured we could use some cash for that.
So how much did you bring in?
Over our Series A and kind of the notes around it, close to 25 million.
Okay, about 25. And was, by the way, good friends with the eVentures folks. They said very nice things about you. Is one of the reasons I want to get you an invite. So, so you have fans over there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, good. So about 25 to date. And then talk to me about total team today. You mentioned some of the talent specifically, but what's the total team size?
It's in the 40s.
Okay.
When I include some kind of contract folks.
Yep. And then, obviously stickiness is critical in any SaaS company. So when you look at past 12 months revenue churn on a gross basis, what was it?
We look at it at a monthly basis.
Okay.
And we target somewhere to, 3 to 4%.
Okay.
Because it's a collaboration offering, and obviously our goal is to get that down over time.
Are you in that range right now, 3 to 5%?
3 to 4%. Yes, that's where we are now.
Okay.
I think we're actually better if you look for work users. What we really started diving in and finding that we're the highest churn, which is bringing us to the numbers I quoted, is coming from people who are individual consumers, non-work domain, coming from the App Store. Whereas when we get someone with a work domain who kind of authenticates their calendar and they come on the web and they're kind of mainly using it for conference calls, those churn numbers are a lot lower.
Yep. No, that makes good sense. Now, let me ask you a question. You mentioned earlier the economics around the payback on one customer you pay $300 for and them expanding to their team with your 0.8 viral coefficient. Do you have expansion revenue that more than makes up for the 3 to 4% churn each month, and the expansion makes up again that hole?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're above 100% net revenue retention then.
I have to dig. I have to dig into the definitions, make sure I'm saying it right. So, because I'm on the air and I hate to be wrong.
By the way, I appreciate you doing that. I mean, basically, I would guess yes. And the reason I'm saying that, you challenge us if you think it's wrong, is because you have strong economics around expansion revenue in Teams based off how people send out invitations. All expansion revenue measures is how much accounts expand, how much domains, right? Teams expand by over a year. And it sounds like you're expanding them fairly aggressively.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you look at our growth, like last quarter was 70% quarter over quarter total ARR growth. So,
what percent was it
coming from that?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you know what percent was from expansion versus new customer adds altogether?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have the answer off the top of my head.
That's okay. That's okay.
My CRO does, but.
That's okay. All right. Last question here. You're in the Valley. It's different depending on where you are in the world. But when you raise, a convertible note, especially after a Series A, some people might assume that you raised at a valuation that was too high in 2018, and you need to grow valuation a little bit more to avoid a down round before your next round. And maybe that's why you do a bridge note. Was that the pattern you followed? And if so, how do you manage that storyline?
No, not at all. I think what happened was, my goal was always to cross $1 million ARR and go out for a round. It was January, and the folks on the board were like, hey, why don't you just raise it now? We don't know how the economics. Back then, people were afraid that the economy would turn. If you remember back in December, January.
Yeah, they still are.
But it turned out it didn't turn so quick at that time. But anyway, they said, hey, why don't you raise around now? You're growing so fast. And I'm like, I'd love to, but if I go out before I hit $1 million ARR, I want to be able to prove this concept of going from individual to teams. So I want to wait till later before I go out. What if we gave you a note? So we did a note. It had a whole bunch of strategics. We targeted to raise a certain amount. We almost tripled the amount we were about to raise, and it filled really quick.
Yep.
So it's a pretty safe story.
I was going to say that what I was trying to tease out of you there was the convertible note was highly useful because it allowed you to get people like Cisco and Salesforce and some of these highly strategic folks in the round and in the company.
Yep. Absolutely.
Very good. All right, let's wrap up with the famous five. Number one, what's your favorite business book?
Ooh, I like Adam Grant's books in general, Give and Take. They're really good. I put that high on the list.
Great. Number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying right now?
Satya Nadella has been impressive. I knew him way before he was CEO and was always an impressive character. I had an experience with him right at about when he was taking over as CEO. I met him for a meeting when I was still running Blue Kai, 150 person company. And it was at 5 p.m. By the time I got home at 7 p.m., he had already written the note delegating all the actions, and he beat me to the follow-up. I was like, how did he do that?
That's so funny. I love that. That's a good leader. Number three, what's your favorite online tool for building your company?
We use Intercom and Salesforce as a company quite a bit. I personally use Trello a lot for my own personal stuff.
Great. How many hours of sleep do you get every night?
I'd say about 6.
Okay. And how old are you?
50.
50. Okay, that's good. By the way, I always try and guess before someone says it started with a 3, and I'm so 50. That's good. It's a young 50. All right. I should say that at the beginning of the episode, I'd probably get more information out of you, right? If I give you compliments at the beginning versus the end. All right. And Omar, what's your situation? Married, single, kids?
Married with 4 daughters.
Oh my gosh, you're busy. Okay, 4 daughters.
Yeah.
Take me back to your 20-year-old self. What's something you wish you knew?
I don't know. Be careful what you wish for, because you might just get everything you wish for, and then you have to sit back and think, is that really the most important thing?
Guys, there you have it. Voicea, again, basically an enterprise voice assistant for meetings. Think of it like a layer on top of WebEx and Zoom that deals with meeting notes, agenda items after the meeting. I call it between 800 and 1,000 logos using the platform today, many thousands of seats under those logos. They just broke $1 million in terms of run rate, up from almost nothing a year ago. Call it $7,000 a month. Healthy growth there, obviously, with small numbers. $25 million raised, team size of 40 today. 36% on an annualized basis. Again, 3 to 4% monthly in terms of revenue churn on, again, gross basis. Expansion, it sounds like more than makes up for that, for 100% or north of 100% net revenue retention. Spending up to $300 to get a new seat. So call it a payback period there that is obviously pretty healthy as it looks to continue to scale. Omar, thanks for taking us to the top.
Thank you.